Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who are doing a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are shiting on the Wheel of Time, and we are finishing up our conversation to the 10th and worst novel of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, Crossroads of Twilight. And I almost forgot that name of the book again because it's so far from my mind. It's so bad, and we're done talking about it. So we're so sorry you guys are sitting here with us. But actually, we are together today because it is the week of Christmas and I'm home and I didn't feel like bringing my recording equipment.
Yeah.
But also if we sound a little bit muffled, it's because we're recording together and we're both in masks because Hannah also has a cold and we are safe because COVID.
We're spaced out and we're wearing masks, so
we're being very careful, but we apologize if there is a lack of hearing. Bear with us. I mean, this recording will still be better than the novel we read. So.
Not hot take.
Not hot take. But we hope everyone's having a good holiday season. And Laura, before we dive into finishing up this novel, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I have watched so many Christmas movies.
She has.
Especially on Netflix. So pretty much every night when I get home, I've been wrapping presents or just like while I'm making dinner or whatever, I've been watching Christmas movies. I've watched, I think, almost all of the Netflix Christmas movies available.
Well, you finally watched Love Hard.
Yeah, I watched Love Hard. I watched A Castle for Christmas.
I don't know what that is.
That's the one with Brooke Shields and Carrie Ellis.
Okay.
Where they have... It's an okay movie if you like Hallmark-style movies. But there's just one part that bothered me, and it was when they kissed. And it's a very unnatural-looking kiss, and... They had okay chemistry for most of the movie where I was like, I could kind of believe them, like, being a couple. And Carrie Ellis is adorable and everyone loves him.
Of course.
But when they kissed, I was like, oh no. That's not, no, stop. Please go in the other room, fade to black. I can't handle this kiss. It just looked bad.
That gives me memories of my mom who would, like, always talk to me about people she saw in movies where she's like, oh, he's so hot. Why is he a bad kisser? Like, she was very vocal about bad kissing.
I don't even know if it's Carrie Ellis or if it's Brooke Shields or if it's just the two of them together. They didn't want to kiss. But it was like, oh, no. It just didn't look right. And I was texting with Veronica, like, live action as I was watching this. And I was like, oh, they just kissed. It's not, no, I don't like it.
I like when my friends, because, like, Laura and Veronica haven't actually, like, technically met. Like, I think you've been to one of her improv shows.
I think so.
Yes. But you guys haven't actually, like, met. But now we've, like, interacted enough where you guys could interact by each other and it's totally normal. And now Veronica's texting Bobby and I'm just like, oh, so many of my friends are in her laughing now.
Well, it's collided.
Yeah. Which is good. I always was known to invite people to different friend groups.
So you're different than me because, like, I see a teacher that I had in high school at the grocery store and I'm like, why are you here?
Shouldn't you stop existing?
You're supposed to be in the chemistry lab.
That's where you live, right? You haven't gotten over like your 5-year-old self.
No.
Like, the teacher lives here.
Yeah, it's like they live at the school.
Laura almost skipped episode 7 of Wheel of Time for a day until I was like, no, you actually have to watch this.
I was watching so many Christmas movies and I was like, I'm in kind of a Christmas mood right now. And then Hannah kept texting me like, oh, this is so good. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to watch it.
But in my defense, it was the best episode of the season so far.
Yes.
So
it was really good.
It was really good. But that's not what we're doing today.
No.
Are you reading anything right now?
So my husband and I have been listening to In a Holidays, which is very funny because we've been listening to it at night, like before we go to bed. And so we'll listen to like a few chapters. And I mean, it's only like a 7-hour long book. So technically, if I was doing this by myself, like during the day, I'd be done with it already. Yeah. But because we are like tired and basically falling asleep, we have not finished this yet. But he's getting so into this and it cracks me up because it's like, the next night or whatever, I'll be like, okay, so what part did we leave off at? And he's like, oh, don't you remember they had just finished doing such and such, and she had revealed to the brother that she liked him. And I'm like, how do you remember all this?
Oh my god, I love that.
But he's getting so into it, and it really cracks me up. And then I watched A Muppet Christmas Carol last night, my favorite Christmas Carol. And so then I was like, you know what? I'll read A Christmas Carol. So I started reading that last night.
Oh, wow. I've never actually read A Christmas Carol. I'm not a huge Dickens fan.
I had to read it in high school, and I hated it in high school. Okay. But I started reading it last night. I'm like 40 pages in, and I'm like, this is not as bad as I remember. Maybe I'm just having like high school literature
I don't know.
PTSD.
See, when I was in high school, guys, I only had like 72 people in my class. There were not that many people, and I was kind of known as the brainy one of everyone. Um, and I remember I read Great Expectations, which was the worst book I've ever read ever. That was like a classic, and I hated it so much. And I had to take a test on it, and I like almost failed the accelerated reader test on it
Oh
because
my
I
gosh.
did not understand it. And then I had to do A Tale of Two Cities and write a book report on it. And it was like one of the only B's I got in English that wasn't by a teacher who didn't know how to teach English. Like, it was one of the best English teachers. And she like
Mhm.
literally wrote on the paper, like, Hannah, I think you just didn't get the book. And I was like, yeah, I know. I hate Dickens. Like,
I was honestly surprised that I thought this was going to be more along the lines of like Shakespeare, because you know everybody talks up Dickens like, oh, he's such a great literary writer, and I thought this was going to be, for some reason I'm remembering this being a lot harder to comprehend than it is.
well,
But
Dickens,
it's very normal language.
but see, the thing is, like, Dickens was a writer for the masses. Like, he wrote for magazines. He
Right.
didn't really write high fashion English. Like,
Exactly. And for some reason I'm remembering it being like really wordy and
well, I also
extravagant,
think
and
that
it's not. It's very basic.
I think a little bit of that is high school. Like, when you're in high
Mhm.
school, you're trying to read in this like in-depth way where you're trying
Right.
to learn new words, you're trying to do stuff.
And
Like,
also you're
after
just like a paranoid high school student that's like, must get A's.
right. And so I feel like you're not enjoying the language for the
Mhm.
language. And so I do technically need to revisit Dickens at some point. I own A Christmas Carol. I just feel like he had such a bad taste in my mouth after Great Expectations
Yeah.
when I was like 15. So, like, obviously, when you're 15 in high school,
Mhm.
you're not going to get Great Expectations. And I also think, like, although I prize myself on being rather intelligent, sometimes with politics, I'm kind of an idiot. And so I
Mhm.
think Tale of Two Cities,
Aren't
which
we
is about
all?
like the history of political upheaval, I think I missed a lot of the like underlying message that we were supposed to be anticipating when we were writing our papers. So
Sure.
I did miss out on that quite a bit, but I'm glad you're reading it.
I mean, it's available. I think Dickens books are probably available all year,
Yeah,
like
they're
with no
probably under
holds
free use.
at all.
Oh,
So, because like the libraries usually have all classics available all the time for people
yeah.
to borrow. So, anytime you want to borrow any kind of Jane Austen or anything like that, it's usually
Well, like
available.
Jane Austen is also like free on Kindle anymore because
Yeah,
like
there's a
it's
lot of those too.
because it's like reached its fair use. So I wonder if Dickens has. I don't know the law on
But
that.
when I went on Libby, it was available right
Okay.
away. So
Well, that's good.
I don't know if it's just a Christmas thing, because sometimes they do like specific months where they're
Right.
like, okay, well, it's October, so we're going to offer Frankenstein, or that's not a good example because it's also a classic, but like a spooky book
Yeah.
to everyone for free or whatever, but with no holds. But I'm guessing it's just because it's a classic that it's so
Also,
available.
can I tell you that there are so many TikToks out right now that is like, what's the best Christmas movie? And people are like, A Muppet Christmas Carol. And people are
Yes.
like, scratch that. That's just the best movie in all of existence.
Yes.
Like, people love A Muppet Christmas Carol.
It's so good. It's so good. And I was like singing along with it. I'm like, I haven't seen this in probably years, but I know like 'tis the season to be jolly and joyous. And I
haven't watched it
remembered
that often. Like, I've not seen that movie that often.
You
in
need
my
to get
life.
on Disney Plus
I
and
know.
watch it right away.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying your Christmas,
My Christmas binge.
I
And
know.
as far as Netflix movies, I'm just going to throw this out to everyone. If you're watching Christmas movies on Netflix, Jingle Jangle is the best one.
Okay.
It's the best one.
I haven't seen Jingle Jangle yet. So which one is Jingle Jangle about?
That one I think came out last year, or maybe 2019. I can't totally remember. It's all a blur. Because like Holiday, I think, was released last year.
I thought Holiday was this year.
I'm pretty sure that was last year.
Okay. Oh, I'm thinking of Hard Love or whatever it's called.
Love Hard is this year.
Love Hard is this year.
Love Hard is this year, and so was A Castle for Christmas.
Holiday was last year.
Last year, I think, was Holiday, and then the one with Rob Lowe,
yeah,
like Christmas in Africa.
Yeah.
With Rob Lowe and Charlotte.
Yeah.
And
Charlotte.
I don't remember her name. Charlotte from Sex and the City.
I think it's Kristen something.
Sure. Charlotte. But then I think Jingle Jangle was the year before that. It might have been like not given as much popular time. I don't know. Because I think the Christmas Chronicles movies came out that same year.
My dad loves the Christmas Chronicle movies.
They were okay, but I think Jingle Jangle is way better.
Okay. What is Jingle Jangle about though? You still haven't answered that question.
So it's kind of like a history of like this toy maker and how it's kind of a fantasy thing too.
Okay.
But this little girl kind of learns about the history of this toy maker.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, that sounds cute.
It's really good. And there's a lot of excellent musical numbers.
Okay.
So
awesome.
Check that out.
Lord
Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
So for reading, I am not the same, and watching. Laura knows this. I'm not a huge Christmas person. I just made a joke. We exchanged gifts, and I got her like 2 things, and she got me many more things. And I was like, Laura, you can tell you love Christmas, and I do not. I gave good gifts, but they were not as good as hers this year.
That's not true.
But I'm also very good at like birthday gifts, which is more my jam. So I am not doing as many Christmas things. But I just finished Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
Mexican Gothic
She
writer.
wrote Mexican Gothic.
Yeah.
I haven't read Mexican Gothic, but I did read her The Beautiful Ones. I like this one a little bit more. It has a lot of like Aztec and Mayan mythology, which is interesting to learn about. Oh, jeez, sorry. I just got a notice from my brother-in-law that my dog's food head was in her dog food bag, so she probably shouldn't eat dinner.
Oh.
That's
Okay,
my dog. But anyway. So I really liked like the mythology of it. Like she meets like a god who's kind of like the god of the underworld almost, but it's not quite. And it's very much like fluid in how gods work because she's Catholic. And it's like, oh, well, some gods leave and some others come forward. And I thought that was really interesting and liked it a lot. But I will say like, I've read 2 of her novels now. I literally couldn't care less about the romance in them because I don't think she writes very good characters.
I feel like when I read Mexican Gothic, it was more of a situation where I'm like, is this a little cringy because this is a non-consensual type situation? And so I guess I can't comment on the romance, but I do think that maybe she writes kind of bland main characters.
She writes very bland main, and like it's a thing where the mythology of this was so great and so interesting, and like the plot of it was good. The characterization of people is not my favorite, and I just don't always get it. So like I liked certain things about the novels, and other things they're kind of lost on me, and I'm just like, okay, this is just like 2 people who I guess are in love because they've spent X amount of time together. And like she tells, it's kind of a Jordan thing where it's like she's telling you they're spending a ton of time together, but you don't get to see as much of it. And the chemistry isn't as good because I feel like sometimes in fantasy it's really hard to write romance if it's not pure romance because you're not leaning into the chemistry of the scenes. And then you just have Brooke Shields trying to kiss Carrie Ellis.
Carrie Ellis.
Yeah, it's like not
no.
work. So overall, I mean, enjoyable book. Glad it was one of my 75 of the year. Not the best. And then for watching, I've been watching a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Really?
Like I got back into it because some of our friends on Twitter was talking about Angel, and I really like Angel, but I've never seen Buffy. I have never seen it all the way through. I got to like season 2 the last time I watched it, and then just kind of like filtered off. And I started watching it again, and like I really think that it's good for like what it did for female characters. I think, and we all know that like the creator of the show has had issues with women in the past, so like watch it with a grain of salt. But watching it in 2021, it's like, how did people not realize he had issues with women? Because the way he writes men, the way he writes lots of stuff is so freaking problematic. Like, one of the nice guys, who I think is his character self-insert, you probably know the name at least, Xander. He is like so toxic masculinity nice guy. I can't even take it. And like,
is that the one with like the spiky hair?
No, that's Spike.
Oh my gosh. Is his name actually Spike?
With the blonde spiky hair?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Spike.
Oh my
gosh. No, his name is actually literally Spike, and he's a vampire. No, he is supposed to be kind of like the big bad for a long time. And like Buffy, they did an interesting thing in the TV series where like, not to spoil Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but it's not really your type of show. And I
probably won't watch it.
Yeah, and I feel like
it's
ruining
spoiling
it
for the listeners.
Yeah, if you guys don't want a show that came out years and years and years ago to be spoiled, like skip 60 seconds.
I spoil Marvel stuff all the time, so might as well.
Very true. But like, it was very unique for the time it was written in, where like Buffy loses her virginity in the 2nd season to her like first boyfriend, and it's just kind of like a decision where she's like, yeah, I just want to have sex, and it's very eye-opening. But it's to a vampire who has a soul, and because he has sex out of love, it's like he has a moment of happiness and then immediately loses his soul, and they have to break up right afterwards, and it's very traumatic. And like,
what a weird take.
It's a very weird take, and I think it did a lot for like, it shows that even if you go willingly into a sexual experience, you're not always going to have the experience you thought you were going to have coming out of it, which good for its time because it was commenting on it in a metaphorical way.
I guess I would
but also
say
coming
you
from,
lose your soul.
Yeah, I know. But that's the other thing where it's
What?
like, this is a problematic person. So him writing it, I'm like, did you actually see where you were breaking ground?
Did he
Or
like, or did
you
he
just, like,
fall into that?
right? And like people just see it for what it is. I think he did a lot, and even like the creation of her was not great because it's like, yeah, I want to show that like you'd never expect a cheerleader to kick butt, and it's like, no, I've known a lot of cheerleaders.
I was going to say a lot of cheerleaders
They're
do
very
a lot
athletic,
of cool things.
Yeah. So I do think it's an interesting take, but it's definitely seen through the lens of 2021 is not great. And like Xander is just so toxic masculinity of like, I don't want to date this one girl, but I'm going to be mad when she gets a new boyfriend. And I really liked Buffy, but she didn't like me back. And like, obviously that's her fault. And it's just like, and like, even in season 1, I remember this very vividly where I was watching it. I was like, huh? We're like, I don't even think in high school you would think this. He like gets Buffy a present and he's like, well, if she's wearing my bracelet, it means she likes me. And I was like,
What?
You got her a birthday present and you two are close friends. Like, I would wear something that a close friend got for me. Like,
it doesn't mean
it doesn't mean that she wants to date you or you have ownership over her. So I think that there's, and like, obviously, like, she doesn't end up with Xander, so I don't think it's like a nice boy getting the girl necessarily that a lot of shows would do, but I do think he like glorifies Xander in a way where it's like, but he's a nice guy, and it's like, nope, I don't think he was. I just don't think he was.
Is Spike a nice guy?
I mean, so far he's the evil vampire in season 2.
Okay.
So, and there's been like stuff that happens with them that I've heard about that's really toxic. So, I mean, I think it's a great show for what it was, but watching it in 2021, it's like, I know that Sandra from Story Darlings is watching Angel for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the last couple seasons of Angel, but I didn't really watch the first few. I kind of came in midway because that was when my dad got us satellite again because he lost Charmed. And he started watching Angel around that time. And so I only remember kind of the ending of Angel, not the like beginning. And she said watching it right now is really hard because there's a lot of toxic stuff going on. So it just shows that like TV shows are definitely a moment in time.
Yeah. It's really hard, I think, for TV shows to hold up.
Right.
And when they do, it really says a lot for the creators of the storyline and the characters.
Well, that's even like sometimes going back to New Girl, I'm like, wow, like Schmidt in the first couple seasons does not hold up as a character. Like, he's terrible. And if he were made today, I don't think they would make him that bad. But like, it was
the example that I always think of that everybody falls back on all the time is How I Met Your Mother.
Yes.
Like, people loved that show so much. And if you watch it now, like, you can turn on any given episode of that and be like, this is very cringy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's even like Neil Patrick Harris recently came out. Like, I think Ted had to have been lying about Barney. Barney couldn't have been that bad. It was through the lens of him trying to like rewrite the story.
Maybe.
To make it a true romance. If this were really happening, that character couldn't exist.
I mean, maybe.
And he's like, and it could be through the filter of like Barney tells a lot of tall tales. And so then like it's Ted buying into them and then making them even worse. So like maybe Barney got turned down a lot more than he claims. And then Ted makes it even worse because he wants the kids to like glorify him instead of his Uncle Barney or whatever.
Okay. I could see that.
Yeah, but like you have to watch How I Met Your Mother through the lens of an unreliable narrator.
Which I think he's unreliable anyways.
Yeah.
No one likes Ted.
No one does anymore. But like at the time, I think a lot of people like glorified that kind of romance in a character. And like, it's like, no, I think if you have a character who is open about like, I don't want a family, you just stop pursuing it.
Right.
It's just, you want different things and your entire thing is built on the fallacy of she'll change her mind.
Right.
And like, and especially if you're the one pursuing, I feel like if someone's being that open and honest and like, stop chasing me, I don't want kids.
Right.
And you keep pursuing, then
it's just disrespectful, honestly, to like do that.
Well, and it's assuming that she's going to change her mind, but like in her place, if you're telling a person up front who you are, and you do know that they want kids, but then they keep forcefully pursuing you, at some point you're going to be like, well, obviously you want me more than you have this idea in your head or something like that. Like there's not enough communication. TV shows don't have enough communication anyway, but yeah, How I Met Your Mother, I'm sure like even like New Girl, Friends with like the fat phobia, like so many things that we've kind of come away from. So I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer is very of its time, but it is easy to watch because it's been a while since I've watched something and it's like 23 episodes. Some of these episodes don't matter. You can have them on in the background and you're just, watch it. Like you're
Right.
not intently watching anything. So I think that's good. And yeah, I can't really think of anything else I'm watching. I'm trying to get back into Community because I've finally gotten to like episodes I've never seen before, which I'm always slower to watch because it's easier to rewatch shows like Community than to like filter in new stuff. So, and I finally watched the last season of Community or of Arrested Development. I started that because I
feel like that's not worth it. Like when I rewatch it now, I just stop before they get to the new seasons. And
they're not good. But I was like, I wonder what happened. I don't know. And I hate to tell you this on air, but I just found out today because it came up on my phone. Julian the Phantoms has been canceled.
Okay, you know what? It's been waiting. They've been waiting so long to announce anything. I kind of figured. I just wish that they would have come back.
Me too. It was such a good show, guys. Like, it was so well done. And they had so many more places to go in future seasons. Yeah. I feel that they didn't.
It must have just been really expensive, is all I can think of. And that they probably didn't have the viewership to justify doing it.
Right. That's what I think as well. I mean, Zoe's Infinite Play. Money, like, with songs is hard. Like,
any kind of dance number or, like, musical number is really expensive, I'm guessing.
Just makes me so depressed. That show was so good.
It was really good.
But
yeah, it's the end of the year.
Okay.
And you are wrapping up your reading list.
Yes.
And so I just had a question. What were some of your favorite books that you read this year?
Well, I read The Bluest Side by Toni Morrison. That was amazing.
I also read that.
I really love Toni Morrison. It was my first book of hers. And I just like, she's a stunning author. So great.
Sure.
I would also say Monstrous was one of my favorites of the year.
Sure.
I really liked Monstrous. I liked getting into the graphic novel side of things and really looking at things with an open eye. I would have to add 1 through 5 of Robert Jordan's because it's the reason we started this podcast and it was us building momentum.
Sure.
Let me see. What about you? Name some of yours and I'll keep going after you.
So I also really enjoyed Monstrous. That was on my list of favorites this year.
Okay.
Let me pull up my Goodreads just so I'm not like forgetting anything. I also really enjoyed Stiff by Mary Roach.
You did love Stiff.
That was a fave for sure.
I would say the Brown Sisters trilogy.
Yeah,
you know how much I love those.
That was a favorite of mine as well.
I
also liked Nimona. By Noelle Stevenson.
I loved Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. That was the one that sealed for me that they're going to be one of my like automatic buy authors. I find them fascinating as a person. Beach Read was one of my
you've mentioned that a lot.
I know, I keep meaning to bring it back for you to read because I actually bought my own copy so that when I give it to you, you can just pass it along because I think like lots of people would enjoy reading that book.
Just cruising through my Goodreads. So the other ones that I will mention as favorites were Born a Crime by Trevor Noah and then Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu.
Yes, which I bought recently based on your recommendation. I also loved How We Fight for Our Lives, which is a wonderful memoir I read. I also greatly enjoyed, Gideon the Ninth was a good one for sci-fi. Yeah. I really liked that one. And The Mountains Sing, that was the one that was in Vietnam.
It was kind of like based on a memoir, right?
It was based on tales that the woman had heard from people in her town, which was very interesting.
Sure.
Yeah, and like Sky Falling, honorable mention. Joe Abercrombie's first book, honorable mention. Master of Jinn, honorable mention. But all of those are very good. So I was happy I read all of them.
Yeah, awesome.
And then, did you have any other favorites?
No, I think that was pretty much.
Do you have a favorite TV show or music?
Favorite TV show? Oh, I don't know. It's hard for me to remember all the things that I've watched because I've watched so many things this year. I really liked Ozark.
Yes.
I love Ozark. So I'll say Ozark was probably my favorite because I think that came out earlier this year, the latest season, because the new season comes out in January again.
Right. Let's say, of course, Wheel of Time was one of the best shows I've seen all year.
Is one of my favorite TV shows this year.
Oh, yeah. I also, the final season of Insecure, and Insecure as a season or a series overall, I highly recommend to anyone. It's one of my favorite series I've ever watched. I'm trying to think of anything else that like really hit home this year, but I can't think of anything
as far as TV that is like standing out to me at the moment.
I really loved that Starstruck series that I saw with the woman who chases after the guy who's like a famous action star, and it's about their love life. I really loved that show. Yeah. Okay. That's about it that I can think of. So, should we unfortunately dive into it?
Yep.
We're almost done. We're almost done.
Let's talk about the women.
Let's start with Egwene.
I mean,
I feel
why?
so bad
Why
for
do
her.
these things have to happen to her? Is this the character that just has to be trashed on all the time?
Yes, because she is the most capable and the one who wants it the most, and so she has to be cut at the knees
Like,
at every single chance
it's
she
just
gets.
like she has to overcome all of the odds.
Well,
And it's like, why does that all have to happen to her?
well,
Like,
it's very
can't we have some of these things spread out?
it's very much like, oh yeah, she's supposed to be Amaryllis C. By the way, it's handed to her because people don't trust her, and then she has to try to convince people to trust her, and it's still not good enough. And then all of a sudden, she has this grand plan, and at the last second makes a huge change that she doesn't think about, even though this character thinks about everything to the nth degree,
Right.
and she gets captured. Like, I know the next book will be terrible for her. I'm not looking forward to it. And it's weird that Robert Jordan takes, because, like, I mean, for a lot of these books, there's an argument that Nynaeve is the most capable character because she's like the strongest, the most strong-willed. But I do think slowly Nynaeve has been like, because he shits on Nynaeve too.
Yeah.
He's slowly been taking and taking and taking from her. And so at this moment, I feel like Egwene is the most capable of all the characters because she's not like held down by pregnancy or boring characteristics like Avienda. And so it's like the character we know the most, the character we root for the most. And he's like, okay, but she's going to have pain and suffering. And she won't
This has been happening to her since the second book, though. I mean, she was captured and tortured. I mean, how many bad things can we have happen to her? I mean, Nynaeve has had a lot of stuff like dumped on her as well. However, it's not to the extent where it's like she's literally been abused. Well, at least that I can remember. I mean, she's had her husband that she's been like kind of just like toting him around or following him around like a little puppy, but as far as like torture or being kidnapped or being walked around naked, like that's not part of a ceremony, I can't really. He does that to so many other characters. I'm like, this seems unnecessary. But Egwene has so many bad things happen to her, and I'm like, how many times does she have to prove herself?
Well, and it also goes back to, like, I understand that bad stuff happens to Rand too, bad stuff happens to Perrin.
Not as much.
But often their stuff is stuff they get out of in that book where it's something for one of them to find inner power to overcome. Egwene's stuff is always someone else has to come to her rescue.
Yeah.
Which when you're looking at one of the most capable characters, it's just not doing it for me. Like, why are you doing
also,
this? Also,
it doesn't make sense.
No, because everything we know about her character is not about her making stupid decisions like this. Like, Rand would pull something like this, I could see. Or like Perrin at the last second would be like, I have to be at the head.
Right.
But Egwene is so hesitant and so thoughtful about everything she does.
Exactly.
It just doesn't make sense other than Robert Jordan all the time was like, well, she has to get captured. I only have like 5 more books to write. Like, 4 more books to write. It's asinine.
I don't know. I just feel like this character has went on such a weird journey, and it's hard for me to make sense of it all.
I agree. I hated this book for her. And like she had nothing to do outside of being captured.
No.
Like, nothing about her character came out in this book.
But really, a lot of times in these past few novels, the only time that some of these women are mentioned is when like really horrible things are happening to them. Like Fail, for example, who we know I cannot stand, but now I'm just like, I feel sorry for this character because now the only time she's mentioned is when horrible things are happening to her. Why is it only like horrible stuff happening to some of these women? And I just, And
again, like, we understand this was written 20 years ago or whatever, but also it's just hard when it's supposed to be this like feminist text from what people have told us. And honestly, there's underlying patriarchy and misogyny just falling in these novels. And it is rough to read when things like this are happening.
Right.
To like Fail getting captured and then almost getting raped in the 10th book.
Right.
When honestly, like, this has been a high fantasy novel that hasn't delved into grimdark territory before. And I don't know why it all of a sudden had to. Besides, like, Fael need to suffer for us to finally like her, which there are a million ways to get us to like her.
Couldn't we have just improved her personality?
Or like, and he had even started doing that by rehabilitating her, by being like, I'm going to control these spies. Sometimes I make nasty decisions because Perrin isn't capable. And he doesn't like seeing how the beef is, or like how the meat is ground down.
Sure.
But like, I'm here to do that for him so he doesn't have to do it. And I'm capable of doing it because I'm a strong person who doesn't care about this stuff. And like, oh, I'm getting over my barrel lane stuff. I recognize that I'm kind of being too jealous and I should trust my husband. And I was raised a different way. Like, these are all capable ways of watching us like Fael better, but we just never get that opportunity.
Never. No. I don't know. I just feel like these women, these past few books, there was such an uphill, like, we keep talking about, like, oh, we really like books 1 through 5. And, like, I think I really enjoyed books 1 through 5 of the series. And then once book 6 started, I was like, you're kind of starting to lose me. 7, I'm like, 8, I was gone.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I just can't with some of these characters.
9 mad stuff won me over, but everything else, like the women in that book were trash. And it's just like, he just hasn't done an effective job of keeping up all the characters that he had. And it's just like, I feel so bad for Fael in this book. Like, she has nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Like, any sense of agency she has gets ripped away from her in the same chapter. You find out she has it, where it's like, I'm collecting weapons. Someone turned me in to keep me under their thumb. And it's like, this doesn't happen to the men as much. The only one it happens to is Matt. And you and I have had long discussions about how that bothers us about Matt.
Better, though.
It is handled better because he still gets agency. He still gets to move around. He still is doing stuff and actively working. And Fael, it's like, I guess I have to trust this person because I have no other choice now. Like, and I might have to ingratiate myself so he thinks I'm actually, like, sexually interested in him. Where Matt at least had the, like, grace to actually be honest about, like, I want to leave. I don't like that you're making me wear this stuff. And, like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
No.
Do you have anything else on Fael?
I don't have anything else for Fael. Just, I feel bad for her now. This is my character journey with her.
Yeah.
I went from despising her to now feeling bad.
Same.
And Elaine,
we
know, has no powers now because she's pregnant.
She can't go into Tele-Enriad because she's preggers with 2 children.
But can she channel now when she's pregnant? I thought there was something like that she couldn't channel.
She can still channel, but they said, like, it's wonky. Like, it's just harder for her to channel now.
And this bugs me because it's like one of those things where I hate when. So the TV show handled this really well, where they made Rand's mom awesome as a pregnant person.
Yeah.
And I really don't like it when we take pregnant characters and just make them, like, helpless.
Yeah.
Because people who are pregnant are awesome. They can do so many things, and please just stop, like, assuming that only bed rest is the option for people who are pregnant. Like, and that's why I feel like this is kind of like hinting at, it's just like, she can't do anything. She's pregnant. All she can focus on is bringing babies into the world. And it's like, oh, come on. She can do other stuff. Please let her still be awesome.
Guys, I once used to ride on the Red Line in Chicago for like 50 minutes. So I often got like a seat on the train. And the amount of times I would accidentally look up at rush hour while I was reading a book and see a pregnant woman just standing in the midst of a very busy train. And I would say, like, do you need my seat? And the woman would actually sit there and think about it. And it's just like, no, you're pregnant. Obviously, you need my seat ahead of me because, like, sitting down, you're carrying weight.
Sure.
But women are capable. A lot of times they would say no sometimes because they're like, I'm fine standing. You're already sitting. It's okay. And women are just, women do a lot of stuff while they're pregnant. And
I know.
Okay, like, so many women did so many things while pregnant and they're still doing them. So
I just feel like there's just such a common misconception surrounding pregnancy to assume that all that women can do is just be like, I'm eating for 2, and then they just kind of like lay around, or they just like walk around patting their belly and like, I have a pregnancy glow. And it's like, no, women do a ton of stuff. Women still work. Women work out.
Also, they're doing it while a lot of times nauseated. Like, there are physical things that are happening to you that you have to just get over.
Right.
I'm like, it's just so dumb to say now Elaine has to drink these smelly teas and she has to eat this gross food, and it's punishing someone for being pregnant. Like,
basically, yeah. And that's kind of what it seems like, where it's like, well, here's her punishment. Like, oh, come on.
Well, and again, this is her, like, first night having sex.
I know.
All she gets out of it is a pregnancy where everyone kowtows to everything. And they also don't give her agency. Like, they take away everything. And she's supposed to be a freaking ruler.
Right.
And like Laura's pointed this out, every decision she makes is a bad one. Every single one. Who she trusts, who she's going after. It's all terrible decision making because she should be listening to Rand or something.
Right.
Like, it's
she needs
so
to
dumb.
get somebody else in there to advise her, like Bashir, for example. It's like, really?
Rand's BFF.
It's like, I don't know. I just don't like how some of these things are handled. And that's another thing that I'm just like, can we please not fall into this trope? Come on.
Well, and Avienda is the most boring character I've ever met. We're 10 books in.
All
I don't
she
know her
does is
personality.
just, like, take care of Elaine.
Yeah. They're sisters. She loves her. And she may love Rand. Who knows? We never really know.
I still can't figure that out because it just doesn't make sense, I guess.
It does not.
It made more sense when they were actually together.
Yeah.
Now, none.
Remember when we were like, they must love each other because they were the only ones who spent time together?
Yeah, we were like all in on like that being the only part of the trio that made sense, but now it doesn't make sense.
I hate it so much. I have nothing to say about Avienda. I have nothing to say about Brigitte, who's just like, again, Elaine's caretaker.
Besides the fact that they are like horrible to her, and they say, we respect you so much, you know, because you're
You're the reincarnated greatest person alive.
Yeah, but then they don't listen to anything she says, and they're just like, you better listen to us, because we know we're, like, no. Nope. Just, no.
Well, and it also talks about, like, now she has an alcohol problem.
I know!
But we know that alcohol has affected Elaine in the past, so it's just like a drop plot line.
Well, and that's exactly it. Like, how much of this warder bond is she feeling? And it's like, okay, so she has a problem with alcohol now. Elaine is pregnant. What? Okay.
Is she putting the babies at risk when she's like, screaming at Elaine that she can't have half a cup of wine?
And the thing is, it's like, we know that they can, like, shield their warders.
Yeah.
But she hasn't done that in the past because she's just been totally fine to be with Rand and let Brigitte feel it. So it's just like, okay, but I don't understand a lot of that. And it's just like, he brings these things up and then forgets about them, or he doesn't forget about them. He's just like, oh, this doesn't kind of work now, but I'm just not going to mention it.
Yeah. And like Brigitte is an interesting character where it's like she has an alcohol problem because she's forgetting herself. And he only mentions it in passing. He doesn't delve any deeper into other than like, this woman is losing her life. She does not know where the love of her life is. She has lost everything she was meant for. She has been known to die and be reborn, and she will lose that this time.
Yep.
And we don't sit with her at all outside of protecting Elaine as her warder and hating that she has to run the country because she's the most capable.
Here's the thing. There's like so many of these characters that he sets up, and the setup is like really good, but he doesn't follow through on it.
Yeah.
And I just don't like that. I really think that like this storyline and the plot itself could have been amazing if he would have.
Well, we're watching it be amazing.
I mean, the TV show is doing a much better job. They've taken this and they're like, we're gonna actually do some really awesome stuff with this, and they are.
Right.
But I feel like Jordan could have done this too, but he's just like,
he's too busy talking about Perrin searching for Fael for 8 chapters.
Some of the things that he decided to focus on instead of like delving into all the things with Brigitte, that would have been fascinating to have half a book about her.
Flirt with Tuon at a circus for 6 chapters.
Or how about like the stupid, I'll bring it up again, Berlaine and Perrin possibly sleeping together and everyone getting mad at Perrin, even though we know it didn't happen. Everyone there knew it didn't happen.
Well, like the whole like going into the mythology of the 2 rivers. Like I feel like he just wanted to talk about the 2 rivers for 14 books, and people were like, "No, you made a complicated world." And he's like, "But I really want to talk about the 2 rivers." Like it just doesn't make sense, and I hate it.
Yeah,
and that's like Nynaeve in this book did nothing.
Nope,
nothing, not a thing. She was one of the most pivotal characters in the last book who still did nothing. At least she had like a major plot point for her, and in this book, it's just like she's running after Lan. That's about it. She's been married now. The thing is,
he won't give anything to these characters either, because, like, in the last book, was that the last book where they cleansed Sidene?
Yeah.
He could have let Nynaeve do it.
I know.
Nope.
It's got to be Rand. Well, that's the thing. Like, and they're also wandering around with someone who was once Senchen, and no, not Senchen. She was Aldam. And she, like, they don't know if they can trust her. Rand's always questioning her, and honestly, I can't tell you her name because she doesn't matter.
Right.
And so it's like, is she going to come up? Is she going to matter at some point? They bring her up all the time instead of having 5 paragraphs on Nynaeve and her actual story and how she feels about cleansing Sidene. If she's still going through stuff where the people don't accept her as an Aes Sedai. Like, there's stuff that still is being dealt with by Egwene that Nynaeve has just been totally written out of it.
Right.
And, like, Nynaeve's character when she's trying to deal with the sea folk. Like, is she talking to Rand about that? Like, they're good friends. Does she trust him? We don't know because nothing's happening with her.
Right.
It's so bad, guys. This book was terrible. Like, and then Min's just Rand's secretary.
Yeah, she has like I do like that certain, but the thing is, we like her because she's like the Moraine replacement.
Yeah, like she's just sitting there being like, Rand, you have to be polite now, and he's like, I guess I have to be polite now. And it's like, well, at least she's doing something.
She's the character that's like, okay, I have reasons for why I'm doing this, and I'm tough but fair, but you need to get it together.
Yeah,
that's why we like her. And these other characters have gone off the deep end.
Yeah, it's so bad.
There was so much potential, honestly.
Remember how half of this book was just people were feeling Sidene being cleansed?
Yes! What a waste!
And talking about what could possibly be going on. Should we go over and check? Oh no. That huge monolithic evil city has fallen to the ground. That's something that's interesting that happens that no one...
I know.
Like, looks at.
Whatever. I think, like, a lot of this, I wish we could have like convinced Robert Jordan to be like, can you delve into that a little more and less on every single thought that Rand has? Like, can we?
Because Rand had nothing to do in this book. Like, he did nothing.
I just said Rand in general, but I mean, it could be any character. A man called Bors.
A man called Bors. Oh my god.
Any random person that he just like brings us through every single one of their thoughts that they have for a week. Could we not do that, and could we have a little more of like some of the interesting things that you bring up and then just toss away?
Could we not meet every single dark friend 18 chapters before they do anything that's evil? Like, I don't need to know how many meetings they have. And
or the other thing is, like, do we have to have like 7 trillion dark friends mentioned and then just like forget about them for 5 books and then bring them back? Like, can we just like honestly have the same big bads so we know who they are? I get too confused.
I'm pretty sure the dark friend in the last book who was like control of Elaine's guard, I think another dark friend was brought up in this book, and I thought it was the same one. I thought it was the same guy. And then later I was like, as I was reading through the plot lines, I was like, nope, it's a different guy. It's a different guy. Just brought up Elaine.
Like, I get it that there is not just always one bad person. There's multiple bad groups and people. However, when you like bring up these dark friends the way that he does, where it's like, I'm going to mention them in the prologue, and then I'll mention them at the end in the battle. It's like, I've forgotten about them. We've never heard of these people before. Come on.
Right. I get it.
Is there anyone else?
I don't think so. I'm going to bring up a couple correction corners we have from one of our listeners who wrote in an email to us that I brought up that we could maybe do this. As we noted before, Knife of Dreams, the next book, is the last book Robert Jordan is going to write in the series.
Thank God. Were there a lot of corrections?
No.
Oh, good. That means we're still.
There is an agreement with us of things we have said before, like the nakedness and the spanking is awful. Mm-hmm. And that women are often left in limbo and there's no growth, or their growth comes through a traumatic event. So there's definitely that agreement with us. And so other people see this. It's not just us.
Oh, I'm not saying that other people don't see this.
Yeah, and they do agree that like they hope they fix it in the show, which so far we think they have.
They are.
And then there was a correction on me saying like it feels like Robert Jordan holds the Aiel to a certain standard that the Sunchen aren't held to.
Oh, okay.
And Aiel are white people, so it feels a little racist from my end. I still uphold that a little just because we sit with the Aiel a lot.
Sure.
Because he does note that like they do hold them captives, and I will say like, and he said that they hold them as slaves. They mostly hold Gaishain as people, and there are rules to that. And that's why I think like the Aiel feel a little bit more civilized than the Sunchen. And the only ones who do hold slaves are the Shido, and they're supposed to be a big bad evil. Okay. So I do want to like I do agree with my feelings that like it does feel a little racialized, where I think a lot of times people who implement people who of other color into a book series will often make them savages, and that's not
right.
For again, I've used that term before. It's how the book is interpreting them, not how I would interpret them or use that word, because it is a horrible word.
Sure.
But I don't think he always does it in the correct way. And then it was that we kind of talk about, and I think we brought this up in previous episodes as a correction corner, like Aes Sedai can control their warders through their bond, but we often don't see it. Like we're told that happens,
right?
But no one can do that. So yeah, I think that those are all warranted. I'm glad people agree with us. Yeah.
And if you disagree, that's fine. We're just like having a really critical take of this book. We're looking at this very in depth and purposely being critical. This is not us like going on here and like gushing over a book we both love. We're purposely being critical. And so also, I'm sorry if you love Robert Jordan a lot. This maybe is not the best place for you.
I also feel like they've probably already gone by now.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like we're purposely being critical and possibly overcritical. But I
don't think so in this book, though. If this is known as the worst novel ever, like you and I have disagreed on like things we liked and things we hated, show and non-show. So I don't think we're coming at this where we're both sitting here going, let's think of every single thing we hate and agree with each other 1,000%. Like you and I are having discourse, and we have to talk about these books for a month. This 10th book has been the longest month of my life of talking about these shows. And that's not just because we're also recording episodes about the TV show at the same time. It just feels like I was like,
the TV show's a lot of fun though.
The TV show is a ton of fun, but like I honestly tonight was like, what are we talking about in this book again? Like I've completely lost the thread on what's going on. And like I can't wait for the next 2 weeks of a break.
Yeah. I mean, same. I would say I'm looking forward to getting into the Brandon Sanderson co-authored books. So I just feel like I'm kind of ready to be done with only Jordan.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've heard the 11th book gets better. So
we've heard a lot of good things about the ones that Brandon Sanderson co-authored.
But the 11th book is the last one of Robert Jordan. I've heard that one's still good. So like, because he has
I'm getting the books mixed up again.
But this next book we're about to read is going to be Robert Jordan's last book. I've heard great things about this book, so I will keep an open mind. Laura will try to keep an open mind.
I make no promises.
And we will remember that after this book, we are taking a month off. So that will help. I think that will make us a little bit happier.
Again, I also have high hopes for when Brandon Sanderson gets involved, that there's going to be some fresh
perspective
takes on some of these situations, and maybe a little more development for some of the characters and their storylines.
I've heard he's great with some and not so great with others, but he's also open about that fact. So I think...
And also, what a hard job to do. Can you imagine doing that? Somebody starts a book series this prominent and this well-loved, and then having to jump in and finish it off. Like, that's a really difficult thing. So I'm going to... I know, personally, I have been very critical, but I will definitely be a little more relaxed when Brandon Sanderson is involved, just because that is such a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. And I hope everyone will continue to listen along with us as next week, we're having a bonus episode with fiction fans. We're going to be doing a Heartland book from our childhood. There's no need to read it because it's just mostly us riffing on it. But enjoy that in the interim into the new year. The new year will bring us into book 11. And make sure today you head on over to our Twitter and the Our Pod Instagram, as well as the Brews Books Instagram, to vote for the final 2 in our voting for February standalone showdown. We don't know what's in it yet because we still need to vote Monday and Tuesday.
Never mind. I'm asking too early. We don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is. We have our hopes set for certain ones, but you just never know. We know that what the Sweet 6 are. We're voting the first 3.
What are the Sweet 6?
The Sweet 6, which we will be voting Monday and Tuesday, so it'll be too late to vote for those by now. Okay. But Monday we will be voting the first Sweet 6 round, which is Cersei by Madeline Miller. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and The Sword of Kagan by M.L. Wang. Okay. And that will be going up against The Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. Okay. Persephone Station by Stina Light. Okay. And American Gods by Neil Gaiman.
Oh, okay. And so you've read American Gods and you've read Cersei.
Yes.
And
you've read Cersei.
I have read Cersei. So I'm going to hope that neither of those 2 win, since we haven't read those other 4, so maybe we could get one that we haven't read.
This is us talking about past problems.
We're talking about the past!
By the time this comes up, it'll be the final 2 on Wednesday, which is when this podcast comes out. And
let's predict early. What will the final 2 be, Hannah? What do you think the final 2 will be?
I'm hoping it's sort of Kagan. And I do want to be the light from Uncommon Stars.
Okay.
Anyone who was on our Twitter last week saw the Battle of Centuries.
Yes, that was intense.
Sarah from Fiction Fans and me going up against King Killer Pod, who was really pushing for a Brandon Sanderson book to win. And we both were like, no, we're not putting them into the Sweet Six. And we fought so hard and we won. You guys are
really competitive.
That
was fun to just watch.
We even tweeted the author. She retweeted that she won. It was amazing.
It was
very exciting. So I do wish she was in the final one, but American Gods is pretty hard to surpass. So I think it might be sort of Kagan versus American Gods. What about you?
I think I will say that in the one side I would go sort of Kagan, just because I've read Cersei and the Andy Weir novel I will definitely read on my own, and I will love it, and I will have I haven't read it, but I know I will love it, and I will have a very hard time being unbiased.
Well, we're only going to be talking about these, whichever one wins, I think 3 weeks, because we are also doing a February She Wrote episode with Literature and Loge by Ben.
I just know it'll be tough for me to be unbiased about that book. And then on the other side, I think I'd also say Life from Uncommon Stars, just because that was such a tough battle.
But that was also Sarah and I just really getting people to vote. So
and also that's been on my TBR.
I know. So. I really want to read it. So make sure you go and vote in the final 2 to figure out which book we are reading for 3 weeks in February. Mm-hmm. We're both excited to do it. It's just a little bit of a pause. And Laura and I have also been talking. We will also be starting what I would like to call, and I'm pushing it for the pod right here online. She hasn't heard this yet. I would like them to be called indie intermissions.
I would not like that.
You don't want to call it that?
I'm just kidding. The look of surprise on his face when I said
Usually I'm the creative person. Usually I'm the person who names stuff, and Laura's usually like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like Standalone Showdown was definitely like something I just came up with as time went on. Usually I just ask forgiveness and not permission. But yeah, we're going to start indie intermissions between each series. We're going to cover an indie author book. So
yeah, guys, we both said we wanted to read more indies, so we figured like in between series that this would be a great way to do it.
Yes. So look forward to some of that stuff coming up in the future. We're planning it in behind the scenes stuff, and we're excited about it. So that's kind of the stuff to look forward to in next year, because we will be finishing up Robert Jordan in May.
Yay! Just in time for my birthday.
I know. The best birthday present I could get Laura
ever is to stop reading Robert Jordan.
March, April, May. Yeah, we only have 3 books after February, and we will be done with Robert Jordan. And this will be a huge feat for both.
I mean, looking back at like my year in review, I was like, I read a lot of books this year, and I was like proud of myself, because initially I had like only set a goal of 30. Yeah. I was like, I don't need to read that many books. I'm not like going to be addicted to this schedule or whatever, of trying to beat my Goodreads goal.
Right.
But then I actually upped it to 50 books because I was reading so many for the podcast.
Yeah.
These Robert Jordan ones. But then also it did kind of ruin my like average as far as reading diverse books. So
I mean, I know that was a hard book, because I was like, oh, like 40% of my books were BIPOC authors and like 56% were women, and I was like, it would have been higher.
It would have been higher if I didn't read these.
Like it would have been so much higher. 10 of them weren't the whitest man in the world.
And I was thinking about it too, and I was like, these were such long books, and I probably could have done like 2.
Yes.
Oh well.
But we're hoping to do diverse choices in the future.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're doing some indie authors hopefully in the future, and I hope you guys will join along with us.
Yes.
And until that time, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. It's a great way to get other people introduced to the podcast before we start new series, into Standalone February, and everything in between. Follow us on our social medias at OurPod, that's OWWR Pod, on all social platforms. You can also email us at gmail.com under that. And follow Hannah's Brews and Books. Great place to find what I'm reading with pretty, pretty pictures. And we can't wait to see you guys next Tuesday for TV Tuesday, and then our final episode of the year with Fiction Fans. Bye!
Bye!